Okay, so we're going to start with, we're going to be switching Agnes and myself, and we're just going to start with a little bit of Zoom etiquette. And I think the main one today for you guys is that please be on mute while the speakers are speaking. We will give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end. And also we are going to please still put chat and anything to the chat box you'd like. If there's questions you have, I'll be dropping in links for Agnes and myself if you want to connect with us afterwards for any kind of more in-depth questions, because I know a lot of people are running webinars and things right now, and the topic we're trying to cover tonight is actually quite a big one, right? We could have done so many different things within the topic of online engagement and community, whether it was technology, whether it's the actual content itself, etiquette. So, there's a lot more that can be discussed today. We're going to do a high-level top tips with you today. And I'm so honored to have Agnes van Rijn with us tonight. She is representing both her own business, The Reinvention Mentor, and also she's the regional director of Athena Central London, which has been a big part of my journey in a community that I'm very proud to be a part of. A lot of the times I'm putting tips together on how to share, how to build community, and I can see that Agnes is already doing them. So it's great to have her here with us this evening. Thank you, Agnes, so much. I will also let you
You're welcome.
introduce yourself again and share us a little bit more about what the Reinvention Mentor side of your business does as well. And then we will go into my bit, and I'm going to share 20 tips with you guys with examples and a bit of tech and all of that. So without further ado, let's jump in, because yes, Agnes, I appreciate you being here so much, because I know you've got so many places and people asking for you to be. So we appreciate you giving us your time today. Let me just start with your presentation, and I will scroll it as you direct me. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So yes, quickly about me. My name is Agnes van Rijn. I'm known as the Reinvention Mentor, and I'm a women's empowerment coach. And what I do is that I help women take back control of their life by becoming emotionally and financially independent by creating the business that will sustain the life they desire. I arrived in the UK in July. It will be 5 years ago, and only a few months after arriving, well, in fact, when I arrived, immediately a week later, someone said to me, you should join the Athena network, but the Central London one. And I called, and the meetings were gone already. There are no meetings in August. And I visited a group in September, joined the group in October, and in November the owner sent out an email to say that she was selling the region, and who was interested in buying it, and that there were 3 territories. You could buy 1, 2, or 3. And I didn't give it a second thought. I sent her an email, doubled by text message, both in French, because she happens to be French. And I said to her, it's the 3. It's for me. No, sorry, it's for me. It's the 3. I don't know how I will make it, and but I will. The reason why I said that I didn't know how I would make it is because I had arrived only 3 months ago in London with 2 suitcases, no income, no savings, 8 weeks of house sitting. I was starting my life from scratch again. So that is one of the reasons why I'm called the Reinvention Mentor. And I made it work. So I took over 4 groups, and I now I'm launching next, the 23rd, I'm launching my 8th group. I have over 100 members, started with 48. And yeah, it's going amazingly well. So the example I'm going to the case study, if you prefer, that I'm going to give you is the one of the Athena Central London network. Knowing that in the past, back when I was living in France, I had already put together a community of 40 coaches, consultants, and trainers living in 15 different countries. So our communication, everything, the engagement was always online. So it was already there, except that back in the days, it wasn't. We didn't have the tools and everything we could be doing now. So yeah, if you move to the next slide, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips, and they may go far further than you would have anticipated. It's not only about once we're online, what are we doing? It's starting by the beginning, the very beginning. So I'm going to give you the headlines first here, and then we can move on to the next slide. So the first one is, what is your driver? What is your big why? Why is it? Why are you doing what you are doing? Then what is the vision you have for it? Then what are the results that you actually want for the community, for the members? Who is your ideal member? What do you want them to experience? And then we are looking at actually what is it that you're doing with them once they are in that online community. And so the very first point is to make them really feel welcome, part of the community, help them navigate the platform, whatever the platform is, help them connect and give them support, engage, play, and make it fun. So Susan, if you move to the next slide, I am now going to take the example of Athena. So my why doesn't relate to an Athena per se. That is my mission. That is what I stand for. And I'm all about helping women reach their full potential professionally and personally, so that in doing so, they become role models for more women to do the same. Because, sorry for the guys online, but I do believe that women are going to shape this world into a better one. So my vision for Athena Central London was, this is all about, that's why I have the visual of behind every successful woman, you have a tribe of successful women who have her back. That is my vision. I have it on my vision board even before I knew that I would take over Athena. It's all about building a community of like-minded women. And what I am, the ambition I'm having, the vision I'm having for Athena Central London is to grow it to its maximum capacity of 18 groups. And that will happen by the end of 2022, because I can technically not launch more than 4 groups a year. And that represents at maximum capacity 450 members. With that, the intention for me is to actually become the flagship of Athena Central London. Sorry, I just got distracted by the chat. I need to learn to not see the chat when I'm talking. If you move to the next slide, so then it's looking at, okay, great, I have that vision. That's what I want to build. But what is it that I actually want for them as a result? So I'm not talking about the benefits. That will be, I think, the next slide. I'm really talking about, as a result of being a member, what do I want for them? So what I want is for them to be professional. And because very often we have very small business owners, sometimes even people who are, you know, having maybe a business from home part-time because they have kids or whatever. I always say, treat your business as a business, whatever the size of it. So be very professional. From a mindset perspective, I'm all about developing an abundance mindset. A lot of entrepreneurs are operating from a place of scarcity, and look at collaborating rather than competing. It's interesting because a while ago, it's quite a while ago, I was attending a panel where women only, half of them were entrepreneurs and one of them were corporate ladies. The corporate ladies were complaining that women in the corporate were, you know, bitches with each other, where the women entrepreneurs were saying, oh my God, that's not at all what we experience. We collaborate so much, we support each other so much. So the mindset is different. But however, there still is, because of the scarcity mindset, there still is that, okay, yes, but I don't want to, you know, work with you because you're going to steal my clients. And then it's all about, for me, I want them to really find the professional and personal support that they need in order to actually become successful, but fulfilled before successful, in fact. So then we look at the next slide. Who is my ideal member? Because I'm a very firm believer in the law of attraction, and what you believe in is what you create. If you don't have a very clear view of who you want as a member, you will attract anyone to you. So by having that very clear vision of who I want to attract as a member, because these members for me are, it's a continuity of the work that I do at Athena at the Reinvention Mentor. What I describe here as my ideal members is also my ideal clients, because that's really what I stand for. So heart-centered entrepreneurs, then understand the notion of networking karma. So what I mean by that is they understand that networking is giving before you're actually receiving. I want them to be willing to have a fulfilling and successful business, whatever successful means to them. So for me, it's people who they may make a lot of money, but money is not an end, it's a mean to an end. What they're looking to achieve is not money for the money. They want to make a difference in the world. They believe that we're stronger together than on our own, and they are committed to reach their full potential. Then we look at the next slide, where I am then talking about, okay, so now I know who have attracted to me as members, but what is it that I want them to experience? So that's what's in it for them. So Athena stands for support, training, and strategic alliances, which is why I've indicated them first as the 3 aims. I want them to be able to experience the power of collaboration, to have a safe environment where they can actually grow, in particular in confidence and clarity, because here we are talking about a community of women. It's a female business network, and women very often are struggling with, you know, the imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, self-confidence, etc. I want them to know that it's safe to test their ideas, to benefit from each other's experience, because we have members at the beginning of their journey, as well as members who are totally, you know, running their business for whatever ages already. And also one thing that I really am very focusing on, I want them to dare to think bigger than they thought possible. So then if we look at the next slide, now I'm bringing them in online. So one thing that I must say is, even if we are at a maximum capacity of 450 members at some point, 450 still is small, quote unquote. Everything I'm describing now will not necessarily apply to a very large community, unless you, of course, have the team to work around it. But I am systematically announcing my members individually. It's not a group welcome as we often see. I will then say what they do, who they have been introduced by. I will tag them to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves to the rest of the community, so that they can start interacting with each other. And I must say that the members are quite responsive. It's very nice when you arrive as a new member to have so many people then saying to you, hey, welcome, and oh, and I'd love to know more about what you do, etc. In that process, I am also explaining, and that will lead to, I think it's the next slide. I'm explaining to them immediately where they can find everything, and how everything works. And I will also immediately invite them to any training that we have that is upcoming, or to any events that we are having. Then the next slide. So this is what I was mentioning just on the slide before. I have a pinned post at the top. It's a pretty long one, but everything, all the answers they need, that is where they can find them. So it also will explain to the, so the links, I give them all the links to whatever they need to find. All they have to do, so for instance, we have a process of hot seating. If so a member cannot make it, they need to have someone else replacing them. There is a link there that explains how to ask for a hot seater request there. So all the do's and don'ts are there. So for instance, there is a post also about you're not allowed to spam, for instance. You can't add someone to your list without adding permission first. We are using also, although I have been less active on it lately, but I have trainings that I do that are located in the units that Facebook has. I use also titles for certain categories of posts because there is so much. The moment you see something in a feed, you may not necessarily remember who said it or how exactly it was introduced. So by having some topics like help, if you do a search on help, you knew that it was about finding help, it makes it easier to narrow down the list. It can be promotion, it can be, a member has been published in a magazine or whatever. That's what we call a member in the news. It makes it easier to find back certain categories of posts, and there are also very clear rules. So not everyone will like that, but that is in particular, as we grow, absolutely needed. So if you then move to the next slide, and I need to go quickly, I see all of a sudden. It's all about also helping them connect and support, because they are in that community. They may not necessarily know each other, but I know most of them. Well, I know all of them. Becomes difficult with the numbers, of course, but I do a member in the spotlight every month. It allows me to present a member. We can then tell more about them. If someone is asking for, I don't know, a family lawyer, I will tag the family lawyers to make sure that they answer. I'm now also in the process of adding expert panels. I am introducing members to each other for possible collaborations when I see a match somewhere. And I will also catch up with people when I know that they may be challenged by something, or that I have a doubt on how happy they are with what they're doing or experiencing. If you can move to the next slide. And then it's all about engaging. So I have a series of prompts, visual prompts. On Monday, we have Promotion Monday. In fact, they are allowed to promote every day, but it's a reminder, please promote yourself. Because again, women often have limiting beliefs about, oh, that's bragging, I can't say what I'm doing, etc. We have Blogging Wednesday, we have book list Thursday, Shout Out Fridays, when you've used the services of someone and you want to let the entire community know how satisfied you are with her. We also do the requests for speakers there, etc. And then the last point on the last slide, this is all about fun, bringing in an element of competition. I have created what I call the networking karma, where I have a whole list of activities that I recommend they do to actually gain in visibility and exposure and make the best of their membership. And every time they do one of those things, like having a one-to-one together or promoting someone else's post or whatever, they get a series of points, and there are prizes for that at the end of the year, 12 prizes that they can win. And the idea here is also that because they have to report it in our group, it gives visibility to everything that is happening. So it's also inciting other members, oh, this is something I could be doing, etc. So these are quickly my top tips. There's more to it, of course, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but via email or whatever other thing you want to put into place, Susan.
Yeah, I'll put your email address in there so anyone can reach out to you as well. Thank you so much. I mean, that was a very good, we as Athena members, a lot of us can see how well that works. Somebody already put a comment in, and they've been a member for 2 weeks, and that welcome post was very welcoming. So I think you do a great job. So thank you for sharing all those top tips with us. And yeah, I'll share all your details with anyone who wants to connect with you.
Okay, just quickly, are you recording this or whatever? Or okay, so I can listen to the next part. Okay, great, thank you. Have a great webinar. Thanks. Bye, y'all.
Okay, so thanks, Agnes. And the good thing is that Agnes has actually covered some of the things that I wanted to talk about myself. So I won't be keeping you guys much longer than we talked about. But I didn't take the opportunity to introduce myself for those of you that don't know me, that have discovered us online somewhere. So my name is Susan Cavani, and I'm the founder of a virtual community platform called Ugenie. It's essentially a private Facebook or LinkedIn for brands and communities who want to share important information with their members and build stronger relationships. We work with a large variety of communities, from purely online ones to mixtures to people who are just using the tech to connect their real world community. And we work with people like the Athena Network and several other business networks here in the UK, including the Successful Women in Business. And we've got their founder with us tonight as well, who could probably do this webinar in her sleep. But also we work with coaches, Premier League football clubs, a wide range of community types. So what I've done tonight is bring together my top 20 tips. I will skip a few of them because Andy has actually covered some of them. And what I wanted to do was I looked at not just my own experience at Ugenie, our clients' experiences, but I actually kind of scoured all the best practices across wherever I could find to bring together the things that I felt kept coming up over and over, because there is a lot of information out there on how to build and engage online. I think the topic can also be divided up into type of content, the platforms themselves, how much engagement, analytics. So I'm going to try to cover a little bit of all of them, but with obviously in the time frame, I'm going to try to cover this in. If you have any questions, I'm going to be doing more in-depth webinars on individual topics of engagement, but you can also just check in with me. I'll drop in my calendar link and my email if you want to talk about your community or anything further. So let's move on to the actual this is just some of the upcoming events that we're having, but if you're on our list, then you'll get to see them. The one that's coming on Friday is a pub quiz in collaboration with one of our clients as well. It was really fun last week. We had about almost 40 people join us, and there were teams of 3. You win a Deliveroo voucher. So as much as we're doing all these kind of fun, great business things, we also want to keep it light and fun. So join us on Friday night. If you have any kids, we're doing a kids version at 6:30, so they can get involved with questions that are very much catered for them. All right, so my first thing that I'd want to talk about in terms of building community is that it's strategy, not technology, which is going to determine the success of any online initiative. So, there's a digital strategy talk I do, which is very different than this, and it's talking about any tech can be made to work for your objectives. I mean, yes, some tech is definitely designed to be better for certain things, but whether you choose to use a Facebook group, a WhatsApp group, a Slack channel, Ugenie, it's about the strategy that goes behind it, that it's really going to make one of those technologies successful. And so it's all about the strategy that we employ to make that work. And what Anya spoke about in terms of so the onboarding timeline that I'm sharing here is kind of taking a look at that visually, that timeline of launching a community, right? So there's lots of steps that are involved, and I know it's a little bit small, so let me see if I can make it a bit bigger for you. But the idea being that before we, let's say we bring a client onto Ugenie to launch a hub with us, or you could put Facebook group or WhatsApp or slot in whatever technology it is that you want to use. The first and foremost thing we're going to take a look at is the strategy and the design. So as Anya has mentioned, and is going to be one of my first tips, is looking at the objective of the community, right? What is the objective of this community that you're trying to build or start, or this Facebook group? And understanding what need it's fulfilling for the people that you're trying to attract. Again, the ideal client or ideal member, that is the only thing that's going to enable this entire process to start, from design to creating your content plan, setting up your tech, testing it with beta testers and understanding what works and what doesn't, tweaking it with whatever that might be. Of course, this is Ugenie specific, but this can be for a Facebook group or WhatsApp. Creating your communication plan, which isn't always just about your one group where your group lives, but it's about how the email works together, how social media, how you create that community awareness piece, which I call an internal marketing campaign, because most of our communities exist already and they just need another piece of, a better piece of technology to connect those existing communities versus trying to create and build and market one. We do an intro email as well to introduce this to the new members, to the existing members, to tell them, why are we doing this, and bringing them along on the journey. And then going from this is all pre-building the community. This is all then what we're going to do once the community is ongoing. So let's jump into the tips. And first thing we're going to also look at is, how many of you know the difference between an audience and a community? And I would say most of us probably have some sort of audience, right? Our audience may be small, it may be a couple hundred followers, it might be a couple million followers, But an audience and a community are two different things, right? And I think that's one thing that a lot of us tend to confuse. I do think I have a big audience. I don't necessarily have an ongoing community that I'm engaging on a day-to-day basis. So my business is to support the other community members, but I don't have that central place where I'm bringing together my quote unquote community. Now, I think if we take a look at as well, would your online group continue to work without you, right? Without your content, without your incentives? And this is a huge factor in whether you're you have an audience or a community. Because ultimately what we want to do when we're building an online community is we want it to foster engagement and conversation without us. And we talk about gamification, and it's one of the tips we're going to talk about today in terms of incentives. But if you took those incentives away, would your community exist? Would people continue to come back? And if not, then you haven't built a true online community. And I think of like a Star Trek community, right? There's not the people from Star Trek going in there and actually talking to those guys, but they have built this, and Star Trek communities are far and wide. You know, you could put any topic on that in terms of, you know, NFL teams. Again, there's not an NFL person in each of these communities, but they're fostering engagement and conversation that can exist without them. And so if we look at the tools that we can kind of look at for building an audience versus a community, right? So in an audience, they're listening. Yes, we want engagement. Yes, we need to pull relevant content, give them loyalty points and gamify it, have a gifting economy, giveaways, right? Giving free webinars away, for example, right? To get the message out there and get our brand out there, having a consistency in our message. So we need all of these things when we're building an engaged online community. Plus, we want to be naming the events and the groups and the individuals and giving them recognition, using insider jargon, right? So, Athena, we have a hot seat. That's not something that other people understand. So that's just one example. Having our own symbols and developing a shared narrative that we can collectively talk about. And again, the value systems, rituals, and consensus building. So it is, if you can see, very different in what is building an audience versus what's building an engaged online community. And what I can see right today, you know, working across, we don't just work on internal engagement. We have to build a funnel from social media into wherever the whole community is being hosted. And I kind of see this as, you know, your social media contacts can be that wide audience you potentially can talk to. You then build that audience and they start to follow you, right? You might get someone to follow your Facebook page, follow you on LinkedIn, or connect with you. At that point, they then may convert into a customer. And today we're not talking sales funnels. That's a very different conversation, but turning that follower into a customer, and then actually taking that customer and turning them into an engaged community member, which is ultimately, in the sense of a customer community, an ambassador for you. And can be one of the strongest selling things that we have available to us today, which couldn't exist, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So as Anya spoke about, you know, the first objectives, and some of these things I'll go through a little bit quickly and just give you the tips on the platform or any kind of best practices, but defining the objective of the community and asking yourself what need it needs to fill, right? Is it a Q&A community? Is it a collaboration? Is it a self-support where you know, what is your time and what do you want to get out of it? So the goal can significantly determine which platform you tend to use. It could be that you're building up an email list because email marketing is still very strong because you want people to buy from you, or you're doing Facebook ads because your product is right. You know, I know that there are community leaders that were using Facebook ads to get people into their community. And that has worked very well in the past. And although in the last year, they're saying that the differences in the algorithm have changed who's coming into their community, and that even paying for people in their community is not necessarily bringing in the right people. So the other thing I would suggest, tip 2, is to join other communities who may fill the need that you're trying to fill, right? So yes, your competitors. Go into the competitor communities, observe and learn. So it might be that you join 5 to 10 other Facebook groups, meetups, LinkedIn networks. You know, there's so many different platforms in which communities live. And look at the ones that are related to what you want to do. Read through the posts, look at what's resonating with the members, what content is resonating, what are they talking about on themselves, and take notes on the trends. What this is going to do is it's also going to help you identify what makes your community different, right? Because when we talk about marketing and building funnels, was what is our USP? What makes us different from the other community that may be doing the exact same thing? And how can we differentiate ourselves? Especially in the world of social media, where if we're using social media posts and things to attract new people, well, the attention span of people on social media is very, very short. And I think in terms of you know, we have to be very be careful that we're not selling or spamming in those groups or trying to attract those people to our communities, because people don't appreciate that. It doesn't feel authentic. Now, I'm in a few groups on Facebook. There's one that's by Stu McLaren. I can't remember what it's called, but I can share it. It's called Membership and Subscriptions. It's all about building, you know, online memberships, which a lot of that is community principle as well. And so I look in there, I'm looking for best practices. What are other people doing? And I'm learning quite a lot from the questions that are being asked and the community sourced. I mean, it's a 32,000 person group. So there is quite a lot of stuff going on in there. There's another one that is UK based. So Stu McLaren, I think, is American, but there's a UK based community that's also that large. Same kind of concept of building that, you know, community and membership. But, you know, if I'm very careful when I'm in there to not say, when people are asking for platform recommendations, oh, hey, I have a platform I think could fit your needs. Even though I think I could, I don't want to be salesy and spammy, because people are going to think that I'm just trying to poach them. And then that will spread across social media. So in terms of platform, you know, when you're looking at these various communities on different platforms, see what's working well, right? Is it a WhatsApp group? Does WhatsApp work the best for the type of engagement you want, that immediate content? You know, WhatsApp is great for immediate responses, building that banter, versus Facebook, which allows for the forums, you know, versus Ugenie. So each of these platforms have their strengths and their benefits, and you want to understand what works best for you. Anya has also talked about identifying your ideal member and client so that you can attract the right people and also create the right content. Okay, so if we're spending time and energy to attract the right members to our communities, and most of this I will say is because we're doing this in a business context rather than social communities, we want to try to get the right ideal member and client to the community, because our goal is most likely to convert them into a paying client if the community itself is not already a paid membership community. And so by having that persona per se, I would say, you know, how many of you have built that customer persona that will show you exactly who it is you're trying to attract? One of our customers is Ashish Veda. She's an international fertility expert. And, you know, last year she came up she's also in Athena, and she said, you know, I'm looking for couples in their 30s to 40s that are professional, that are having a hard time conceiving. And all of a sudden I really knew who this Ayurveda expert was looking for. So that customer persona really helped me in that 15 seconds understand what she wants. And that's what she can do now to go out and target and find the right people and create the right content. Now, if you're going to use something like Facebook, so I'm going to give you some pros and cons of all these platforms, is that if you're going to use Facebook, but you're going to have different groups of people you want to serve in Facebook, then you need to start different groups for each of those communities. Because what you don't want to do is one overarching group in which some content or most content is not relevant to me as a subgroup owner. So the best way to use Facebook group for targeted content is to create multiple groups, and or using Facebook as a funnel to something else that's a bit more targeted and curated. But what you don't want people to do is to join your group. And because today we can be in 50, 100, 200 Facebook groups, especially when they're free, I can just jump around to another one because I feel something is too spammy. We want to create, I'm going to move on to this. So create a name, look, and feel that represents the brand, but is unique to the community. So I'll give you a concrete example. We've got a client, Piyush Patel, who is a Federation of Small Business Membership Advisor, and he's created and called his community the family. He's trying to elicit that feel that you guys are special to me. You are my members. I'm going to go above and beyond. And by just calling it something other than, FSB members group or something like that, he is given value to this community to make people feel special. So, the idea here is that when you're looking at platforms, can that platform be curated? Can it be branded? Can it give it the look and feel of what you're trying to do with your brands? And various platforms do various different things. Now, choosing the right platform, I've been kind of interweaving throughout the conversation, but a few questions that I would ask is, when you're trying to find the right space for your community, is your platform easy to access, right? Is there a single sign-on? Are they going to need to download an app? Can they be on web? Is it closed behind a closed door? Does it allow people to share content easily? And what is it that you want to share and also you want your members to share? Does the platform allow for push notifications? Because, and is that something your community members want or don't want? Do you want to customize the platform, as I talked about in curation and branding? And again, does it integrate with other systems you're already using? And all of these things are going to make it easier for you to use a technology. Now, we're constantly trying to evolve so that we tick all these boxes as we grow as a startup. Then we're going to talk about content. And I talked about all of these already. I should have showed you guys a slide. So we want to start talking about content, right? Creating a content plan based on the channels you've chosen, the platform you've chosen, and that really fosters engagement. Now, they say content is king. I actually think community is king, but content is very, very important. And without great content, online communities just don't work. So the idea, other than sometimes in WhatsApp groups, when you just start a WhatsApp group and letting people banter, but even in there, it's usually a few kind of people who are super active with everyone else kind of lurking. And I'm in a bunch of these groups where they can be kind of self-serving. But a lot of communities need a good amount of content from the brand and the organization. So we want to build a content plan where your users are also encouraged to interact with each other and collaborate, as Anya said, and not just with you as a brand. We want to encourage that collaboration. We want them to get value from each other, because ultimately, to sustain this community in the long run, we do want that take over from the brand and you are doing everything to the community is starting to run itself because people are sharing and posting and collaborating. And that's the true key to a sustainable long-term engagement online community. Couple of content tips is not being too repetitive and also doing the 80-20 rules when it comes to selling. So 80% value, if not more, with 20% of what your offers are, what your services are, and selling yourself. And being very delicate about that, because a lot of these online communities are value adds. And if people feel they're being sold to, they will leave. So we want to be careful about that balance. In terms of platform with this one, I was talking to a potential brand yesterday as well, who is currently on WhatsApp, and their challenge there is that when they're adding new members to the community, they have to repost a lot of stuff, right? So there's no archive in WhatsApp. And although they love the immediacy, they like that everyone's already on WhatsApp. So those are some of the pros, that they can just invite people, which I actually personally hate when people add me to a WhatsApp group without asking me, because I always feel really embarrassed to leave, and I always feel like awkward to be that person that left. But especially because the relationship I have with that person who started it. But personal things aside, in terms of, if you can't archive the content, you're going to have to keep reposting the rules that we are, that Anya's talked about, and some of the more kind of vital content. And that can be a little bit, not necessarily great for your older members when you need to do that. A lot of this has to do with staying organized, right? So keeping all of that information, all of that membership information, the data organized, because if you do keep it organized, one of the things you could do is take the commonly asked questions and turn that into content. So if you know that people ask all the same 5-6 questions and there's trends in your topics, not only can you create new content that serves those, but also it might help you understand whether there's a flaw in your product or service. So, if somebody is also consistently asking, for us at Ugenie, oh, how do we do this? Well, then I know that there's something wrong with my UX and I need to fix that. Rather than trying to educate and educate and educate, we need to make it simpler. We need to make it really, really simple so that people can use it without having to ask any questions. Because from a tech perspective, the principle of technology is build it as simple as possible, making people do as little as possible. But then again, we need to think about what the value is of, integrating a new tool or something else, if that can be a better community experience in the long run. So sometimes managing and balancing what the immediate short-term wins are with what the brand and community's objectives are in a longer period of time. And my final tip when I get there is staying consistent, but also giving yourself some time, being patient. These things don't get built overnight. Staying organized. So some of the things that you could do from a daily, weekly, and monthly perspective, right? So you want to make sure that you are going in there on a daily basis and responding to group or individual comments, responding to any direct messages or emails. Very, very timely, you need to respond, because again, if this is a business community or a client community, it's just a principle of responding to people, when they have a query for us. I'm trying, as much as I can, respond as quickly as possible to any query. But it's even more important. I mean, some of the worst practices that we can do is having a member post, actually taking the time to post, and nobody responds. So, Miss Jones was one of our large networks, is a VA/PA network, and in the first couple of months, and also Piyush from the family, immediately in there all the time, responding to questions, adding content. We had one community that we had in our alpha phase where people started to post, but the admin wasn't there to respond. And so of course they're going to then lose that, they're not going to post again. So in terms of weekly scheduling your posts and communications, looking at post communication and metrics, I'm happy to share these slides. And so, to go into the nitty gritty. So I'm going to move on to the next tip. In terms of creating a marketing funnel, which leads your prospective members to your quote unquote home base, right? So whatever that bottom of your funnel is, you know, if we're talking about this from a marketing perspective, you may be using a Facebook group to get people to get their email address, right? On Facebook, it might be great and easy to get people into the group, but you don't have any way to access them outside of Facebook. So if Facebook shut you down or blocked you, how would you do you have the email addresses? Even a simple mailing list where you could contact your people to say, hey, we've moved over to Slack, or we've moved over wherever that might be, right? Until Facebook lets you back on. And if you've connected with me on any of these platforms, you know that I'm actually a big user of them. I share quite a lot, but I would be fearful in the stories that I'm hearing with people, Facebook groups being taken away from them or their account being paused. And Facebook is getting stricter. So on one side, it's a pro that they're going to start looking at content and making sure that, you know, it's not illegal, it's not pornographic and all of that. But a lot of that is being done by bots. And so even with Instagram ads, I've had people tell me that their Instagram ad was blocked, but they couldn't understand why. And so, you know, as these big technology companies scale, it's not always a human person vetting something. It's technology, and technology has its pros and its cons. Okay, so let's get to the next one. So setting metrics for success. Ultimately, how do we know how well things are going if we haven't understood what we want to achieve from it, right? So if you want to have, let's say, 10 people in your community, and because you're a business coach and you only need 10 and you're charging them X amount, you know, the platform will change, your engagement metrics will change, and all of that will change. But the data as well, you want to make sure any platform you're using allows you to extract all of that data that's important to you. So, you know, some of the things that you can be looking at would be, you know, how many new members are joining each month or each week, and is that important to you? Or are you annual memberships, so that weekly thing maybe doesn't count? How many people are leaving? You know, it's so expensive to acquire new customers today that once we get them into the brand or the community, we don't want them to leave, right? So how we're tracking that in terms of that. Are new members and existing members participating, and what are they participating with? What content is being most engaged with? So we want to be looking at lots of, you know, things on content perspective, and looking at platforms that allow you to really engage and monitor that is really important. So the other things that you can monitor are traffic. If your community is on a website, consider this your web traffic on your community. Do you see growth over time? Where is the growth coming from as well? So you can kind of increase the efforts for that channel. And, you know, if there is a loss in membership, talking to those people who are leaving as to why they left. Now, in online communities, a lot of times once somebody has left, it's too late. They won't come back. But if you can talk to the people who leave, you know, figure out what was it, so you can stop more people. And sometimes you can entice people back. I'm not saying you can't. I'm going to quickly go past tip 10, because it's essentially the rules and the guidelines that you know, Anya's talked about. But the guidelines are really important. And the one example I do want to give is Slack. So, you know, there's the idea of those of you who are not familiar with Slack, it's got different channels for conversation. So I do think it's better from a WhatsApp perspective. You can do a channel for, you know, it's sort of here, we've got a mobile app channel. We use it for our own team as well, our team of 7 developers, just so we can talk to them in real time. Great tool for like problem solving in small teams. As it gets bigger, though, I find I don't join any other Slack channels myself, but you know, some of the channels problems can be is that people are posting in the wrong channel. And so again, in that WhatsApp group example from yesterday, it's a COVID support community, and people are posting in their stuff that isn't relevant to that. So then they had to start another WhatsApp group that was, you know, fun sort of thing. So it's great to kind of get these. There are so many pros and cons to these platforms. It's understanding and setting those rules of what we want, and then also making sure that we're monitoring them. I'm going to share a YouTube link into the chat as well, because last week we did a webinar on the basics of remote working, and we have all this etiquette on Slack, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook that you can watch if you'd like. I spoke about Slack at minute 6:08. So if you want to skip the introduction and just get to that bit, I'll share the minute. The welcome tone, I'm going to actually skip because Anya's was great. I think the big thing that she spoke about is making it as personalized as possible, making people feel really, really welcome, and not that it's just a group message. I mean, on Facebook, when I get tagged as one of 50 members, I mean, you know, people, oh, introduce yourself. And by the time I've done it, I'm the 25th comment. How many people are actually going to read that? So I don't bother anymore. I'm sure other people still do, though, and find value in that. Encourage networking, not selling. So the online community is also only as valuable as your members think it is. Encourage them to network with each other, so your community becomes that place, that home away from home type of concept, right? And you want them to be really feeling like they can engage and be themselves, and it's not just about being sold to. Now, if the group is large enough, I would encourage you to have ambassadors, have moderators, have people who are encouraging meetups in real life, and one of the things that I think face-to-face or Zoom meetings, of course, we can't do face-to-face right now, but I'm encouraging everyone that I'm working with to do webinars and Zoom calls, even just casual ones, with a glass of wine, so that we can be building those relationships, because that's what, people still crave quite a lot of that human interaction. Monitoring closely and responding quickly. Some of these things I've kind of interwoven into the rest of the talk, but having your guidelines, but doesn't mean people follow the rules, as I'm sure we all know. And how many times have we all been on Facebook groups ourselves where the admin, isn't monitoring, and it just becomes a spam group, and it doesn't become very valuable for people anymore. One example I'll give you is this group that I'm in called Happy People. And Happy People is a series of WhatsApp groups. I'm in 3 of them. And one of them is called Happy People Socials. Now, Happy People Socials' pure objective is to meet in real life. So people drop in, oh, we're going to this pub, or we're going to this concert, and then people can just meet them. Right now, the group admin has shut it down until we can actually meet back in real life. So I found that really refreshing, because people were spamming, like they were still talking in there, even though that wasn't the objective of the group. And by putting it into lockdown for now, it's really, I think, a really good, strong, and a good thing a leader should be doing. They've done the same thing in one of the other groups, which is all about work banter. And on the weekend, they lock it down. So you can't post into that group on a weekend. So, also just kind of being there and looking at that. Initiate discussion and add your own personality to the conversation. And I think one of our, leaders all of our leaders, is very good in doing that. But Piyush Patel is a very, very charismatic. If you guys haven't met him, he does a lot of videos, and you can see him on LinkedIn. I would follow him if I were you. But yeah, he puts himself in all the videos, and he's very fun and interactive. And, he's put his personality into it, which definitely brings kind of engagement into the community. Because people don't talk on their own. There was a community we were working with last year, and she's built lots of online communities. And she said for her, the magic number had always been 300 people in a Facebook group before the Facebook group will actually just be quite self-sufficient. And it could be different if you have a very small, intimate group. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but for her, she wanted to set up a group, grow it very big, and create a funnel. And for her, what she was seeing was 300 was the magic number. Now, for those of us that are using these for business purposes, keeping our community warm, right, giving them a great way, essentially keeping them as warm leads, rather than just having a Facebook group, warm leads into something else, is that we want to give them exclusive opportunities, from coupons and discounts to freebies that are only available to them. I mentioned earlier, Ms. Jones, one of our clients, she created a Ugenie community for her elite and paid membership. But right now with COVID, she's like, I want anyone to join it. She's had about 100 and something people join in the last 2 weeks, because she's opened the doors to her entire database, and say, look, just come in and be a part of this community right now. But she's still keeping some things that are for her elite members only, because they have paid, and she wants to be able to show that value. In terms of, I saw the question about the platforms and the analytics. I can definitely answer that in a bit more depth. I'm just going to come to the questions at the end, if you guys don't mind. And I know we're hitting about 8 o'clock, so I'll go through some of these last few points a bit faster. But this was the special offers. We also want to cultivate stories, right? So asking our customers to tell their stories, both about using our product, about using various things, our services, et cetera, because some of these things can become very good organic testimonials once you get permission to use them. Asking them to share feedback, even just asking members that are experts in our communities to give their time and give a webinar, or to give their expertise. They're going to feel great because they're getting that exposure, and your community is going to benefit from another voice and extra expertise. Now, I think this point is, we can quickly go on because everyone does this, I think, already anyway. Analyzing your user data so that you don't have to ask for feedback. Now, tip 18 is going to be ask for feedback, but if you can use your platform, or whatever platform you're using, and use the data to actually not have to add for feedbacks in the first instance, you can actually create products and services that better serve your community without even having to ask them. And if any of you have asked for feedback like we have before, sometimes you get like 3 responses out of 100, right? People don't actually necessarily always give that feedback. The best feedback I always get is qualitative, when I actually pick up the phone or I'm getting on one-to-one calls. But when I send a survey out, I get very few responses. And so that's not just me. I think it's a lot of us. But by looking at that data, right, that data is a very powerful tool to inform the decisions, like, open rates, the tone, the imagery, what things people are responding to. So you want to make sure that whatever you use is giving you that data. The next point is, as I mentioned, ask for feedback. So, oh, whoops, actually, that was an example. I think someone mentioned where in Ugenie, we are showing people, the number of comments and the number of posts by member when they last logged in, so that the leadership can understand that, hey, this might be the community member of the month. Although we haven't built that tech yet, they can actually manually go in there and say, well, this person has made quite a lot of posts, right, over the last month. Let's give them that gamification principle of rewarding our most active community members. And also in the last active, we can reverse this and we can take a look at, well, who's been least active, who's not interacted over the last 3 months. Should we reach out to them in another way? Should we email them? Should we give them a call and try to catch them before they're on their way out, whether that be from the next annual payment, the month payment, whatever that might be. So yeah, asking for feedback, of course, is important. If you can do posts in the community asking for feedback about the community itself, we of course want to always make that experience better for people. And again, my tip there would be to make it as easy as possible. So let's just say, rather than asking, what your favorite topic is, give the actual most popular answers in a drop down or in a tick box so people can just tick things. And so if anything you can do to make getting survey and feedback easier from your members, it's going to make you getting that information back a little bit more possible. We did have another new client we're launching, and she said that they run these big festivals, and last year they had quite a lot of feedback on just open-ended questions. So it's not that people don't want to do that, but if we can simplify getting feedback and make it fast, we're more likely to get it. We spoke about gratitude and recognizing our community leaders, the ones that are most active, that are giving back. People like to feel like their participation is appreciated. We want to thank them. That might be through a thank you post in the group, or on email, on social media. And I mentioned gamification, but I'm going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. I think it's also really careful. We have to be careful about incentivized programs, because if we're using incentives to motivate individuals, coming back to my question in the beginning, if we stop doing that, will people continue to do that behavior? So, if I'm expecting money every time I do a behavior, and then I stop because, I can't give any more money, or I can't give out something, then will the participation in my community completely go down? So we need to be careful with using incentive in games to increase engagement, but can we then sustain that? And so I definitely think that one of the easiest ways of us kind of showing that gratitude is giving those community leaders recognition within the community, or giving them a prize if they're the most engaged member. But again, being careful about that. The final tip, what we're introducing right now actually is a Ugenie Community Leader of the Month. And so from our clients, we're going to profile and highlight those that are going above and beyond. And to my eyes, they all are. So everyone's going to get a turn, to be honest. And, we're going to have Successful Women in Business and Jill in June. We're going to have Piyush next month. So we've got the next few months lined up, but Anya is this month. You heard yourselves that she knows what she's talking about, and is a great community leader. Finally, be consistent. Consistency is key. And I think any kind of top tips about building a community online, anything online really, is being really consistent and giving yourself the time to build up that audience or that community. Nothing happens overnight. We live in a very, very busy and digital and noisy society. And so all of these online initiatives, unless you're like a superstar like Jennifer Aniston, who can go onto Instagram and break it because she had, I don't know, like 10 million followers in the first hour, unless you're Jennifer Aniston, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take a bit of time. So, being kind to yourself on what you're going to do. But coming back to the objectives is, if this is a business community and you need 10 people in there in a coaching program, and you have 10, okay, great. Well, let's just keep building that funnel, but maybe, we can be okay. So anybody have any questions? This is the time where I can look in the chat and open it up to some questions. If you want to come off and ask a question, I can just see if there's anything in here. I know usually I try to finish in the hour, because then everyone's always back to back and it's dinner time. But let's see if there's any questions that anyone has. I think there was one that I saw about what do we use for monitoring engagement, churns, and active members. So I think in terms of Ria, the question we use Ugenie, obviously for because it's built into the platform. But if you don't have Ugenie, Facebook has analytics built in into the back end. You can have for those of you that use Facebook groups, WhatsApp, it's a bit more difficult. You can see what the engagement is because it is constant, but what you're not going to be able to see other than reading everything is what the hot topics are, what people are talking about the most. The one thing I really like about WhatsApp over the last couple of days is that they're going to prevent people from forwarding things into multiple groups. So they're going to start coming down a lot harder on people that are just pressing that forward button and getting it across into like 15 groups. And definitely my mom is going to be blocked at some point, I'm sure. But it's not just her. There's a lot of us in our Indian families, and I'm guessing it's not just Indian families that are getting a lot of the same forwards. But it's also to stop the sharing of fake news, which at the moment is going quite prevalent. But coming back to your question, Riyadh, you probably would have some great suggestions on that as well. As the CRMs you're using will have a lot of data. HubSpot's a free one, and I know it's a very good one. We use Keep at Infusionsoft. So, for example, we'll send an email out, a follow-up from here tomorrow. We'll know who's opened it because it's all set up in there, right? So I will know if you guys open my emails or if you opt out, which is okay. No, it's no problem. But that's what we're doing, is we're using the software to keep track and making sure that whatever our objective is, that software actually keeps track. We go back to the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule in this context today was from a content perspective. So 80% of your content should be value adds and beneficial with a non-salesy tone and non-salesy objective, with 20% being about selling your product or service, or if that community is made for that. There's also just lots of different types of communities. I haven't focused on family communities, religious communities, etc. Today's been very focused on business communities and online communities that help us from a monetary and revenue perspective. But we want to make sure that we are not creating a group and just selling at them. So the standard is 80-20 to try to make sure that balance is correct and people just feel an enormous amount of value coming at them. Is there any other questions? Okay, so I really appreciate everyone joining us today. As I mentioned, I'm going to drop in some into the chat before you all head off, although we'll email it out as well. I will drop in Anya's before we leave. I will drop in some chat. So if you want any information in terms of my email or Anya's, you can obviously find more information about us on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great tool, I think. And the way I'll leave you guys with is the last final note is social media, including LinkedIn platforms, essentially are great ways for us to build relationships with like millions and millions of people on a very shallow level, right? We do need to do that. It's very, very important. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, do you not like Facebook or do you not like LinkedIn? Why are you against these platforms? I'm not. They have a purpose. For me, they're marketing tools, and I'm going to use them and I'm going to leverage them for all they're worth. And for Facebook, it's going to be much more personal with a little bit of business, whereas LinkedIn is all LinkedIn with a little bit. LinkedIn is all professional with a little bit of personal. But we use and leverage these platforms as we can as marketing funnels, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're not at the mercy of a large platform for our community as well. And that's one of the reasons we started Ugenie in the first place was, it's very ironic with COVID, actually, that we were a task sharing platform. We wanted to enable community members locally to connect on sharing tasks. So that might be the nursery carpool, the drop off, picking up of dry cleaning. Right now, it could be, food sharing. It could have been for anything. So ironically, that's what started us. But today it's turned into something, more. We just haven't built the task sharing feature yet. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you want the recording, well, you've already watched it, so you probably don't want the recording. But if you want, I'm happy to share my slides. I will ask Agnes if she's happy to share hers. And if you have any other questions, or if you want us, have a chat about a community that you're building or your digital strategy, do get in touch. Other than that, have a good night, have a glass of wine, and see you guys soon.